Okay. Genau, ganz herzlichen Dank fürs Kommen. In dieser großen Runde darf ich auch nochmal auf die Veranstaltungsreihe hinweisen, in der Sie sich befinden, bevor dann meine Kollegin Anne von der Heiden und den Gast des heutigen Abends, Slavoj Žižek, vorstellen wird. Sie sind hier in einer Veranstaltung der Reihe Relativs, die Anne von der Heiden und ich in diesem Semester ins Leben gerufen haben. Wir haben versucht, den Titel für eine Reihe zu finden, in der Leute zu Wort kommen, Menschen zu Wort kommen, die uns schon seit längerem oder seit neuerem sowas wie Wahlverwandtschaften in Sachen der Wissenschaft sind, also Menschen, von denen wir viel gelernt haben, vielleicht aber auch solche, die sich auf ähnliche Themen oder auf ähnliche geistige Kosmen beziehen. Relativs, wir sprechen es immer unterschiedlich aus, Anne und ich sage immer ganz elegant französisch Relativs, sie sagt immer Relatives und beides stimmt. In den Relatives steckt eben so ein bisschen mehr von den Verwandten drinnen, in den Relativs steckt ein bisschen mehr vom Relativpronomen drinnen. Das ist ja eine sehr interessante grammatikalische Konstruktion. Das Relativpronomen ist nämlich sowas wie ein Stellvertreter. Die Frau, die jetzt gleich Slavoj Žižek vorstellen wird, da ist das die sowas wie ein Stellvertreter. Und das hat uns auch interessiert. Wie können wir sowas wie lebendige Avatare von sowas wie Denkstilen auf die Bühne bringen, die für uns sehr wichtig sind. Das heißt aber natürlich nicht, dass die Menschen, die in unserer kleinen Reihe sprechen, uns vertreten in dem direkten Sinn. Aber sie bewegen sich, so denken wir jedenfalls, in einem ähnlichen Kosmos an Bezügen, Referenzen und Themen. Und das macht uns sehr glücklich, dass wir hier so einen Rahmen schaffen konnten, um unsere Bezogenheiten auch auf die Bühne zu bringen. Noch eine kleine Bemerkung, dann höre ich auch schon auf. Was wir hier auch vorhaben, ist, dass wir eigentlich nicht sozusagen Festvorträge und völlig Abgeschlossenes präsentieren wollen, sondern sowas wie Forschung in the making. Wir haben also alle, die wir hier eingeladen haben, in dieser Reihe dazu aufgefordert, irgendwas mitzubringen, woran sie gerade wirklich dran sind, woran sie arbeiten und wo es vielleicht noch nicht die ultimative These gibt. Also auch das ist ein Merkmal dieser Veranstaltungsreihe. Wir haben diese Reihe gemeinsam mit dem Kepler-Salon auf den Weg gebracht. Ich habe Herrn Travöger auch irgendwo gesehen da hinten. Ganz herzlichen Dank für die Kooperation. Das ist sehr toll, dass wir mit jeder zweiten Veranstaltung in den Kepler-Salon gehen können. Mit dieser hier wäre es wahrscheinlich nicht so wirklich gut möglich geworden. Und das ist vielleicht auch ein ganz guter Moment, um mal allen zu danken, die uns bei dieser Veranstaltungsreihe sonst so helfen. Alfred Gardner, der irgendwie dieses Chaos des heutigen Abends managt, inklusive der Veranstaltungstechnik. Und dann hier vorne sitzt Judith Maule und Sarah Sander, die uns auch bei allen Veranstaltungen ganz großartig unterstützt haben. Ohne die ginge gar nichts. Leonie Lehner sehe ich gerade nirgendwo, die hat unsere tollen Plakate gemacht, also auch an die 3 Ladies ganz großen Dank, sonst wird das überhaupt nicht stattfinden. Dankeschön. Gut, und jetzt geht es dann wirklich gleich los. Kleiner Hinweis noch auf das grande Finale dieser Veranstaltungsreihe. Nächste Woche ist schon Eva Kernbauer bei uns zu Gast mit dem Vortrag Vorsorgliche Rückblicke, Geschichtsbewusstsein in der Gegenwartskunst. Diese Veranstaltung findet um 18 Uhr CT nächsten Dienstag im Kepler-Salon statt. Sie sind herzlich eingeladen zu kommen, aber bitte nicht alle. Wir haben da nicht so viel Platz.
Ja, einen schönen guten Abend auch von meiner Seite. Slavoj hat jetzt noch ein bisschen Zeit, seine Seiten zu streichen, dass wir wirklich auf seine 45 Minuten kommen. Ich will ihn nämlich ganz kurz Ihnen vorstellen. Und Sie wissen das schon alle, sonst wären nicht so viele hier. Slavoj Žižek vorzustellen ist eigentlich absolut unmöglich. Denn was hat er nicht alles gemacht, was hat er nicht alles geschrieben? Schauen Sie sich einfach nur, das haben wir im Internet auf der Homepage der Kunstuniversität gepostet, das slowenische Bibliothekssystem COBIS an und schauen Sie mal rein, wie viele Publikationen dort von ihm aufgelistet sind. Ehrlich gesagt, an der Kunstuni dauert es lange, um überhaupt diese Datei runterzuladen mit all diesen mit all diesen Listen von Publikationen. Und was ist Slavoj Žižek nicht alles? Er ist Philosoph, er ist Professor ohne professorale Attitüden, er ist Lacanianer, Hegelianer, er ist Zwangsneurotiker, er ist Materialist, Marxist, Leninist, Feminist, Verfechter der Pünktlichkeit und vieles, vieles mehr. Also mal die Fremddarstellung von ihm ausgeschlossen, sondern das, was er selber von sich sagt. Doch heute und hier ist es ausnahmsweise erlaubt, nicht ihn vorzustellen, sondern über ihn uns selbst. Das ist das Projekt, das hat Ihnen Karin Harasser gerade präsentiert, der Relatives, sozusagen über uns und unsere sozusagen Arbeit und thematischen Felder zu sprechen. Wie habe ich immer in meinem Werdegang Begrüßungsreden von Kolleginnen gehasst, die immer nur sich selbst vorstellen, anstatt den wissenschaftlichen Gast. So nach dem Motto, wo er, sie, mir in meinem Lebensweg schon begegnet ist, in welcher Publikation ich und sie irgendwo mal, wenn auch nur zufällig, gemeinsam aufgetaucht sind, als ich die wichtige These vertrat, etc. Heute werde ich mir diese Taktik selbst aneignen. Da das Konzept der Relatives genau dies erlaubt und zum Thema macht. Sie haben es gerade gehört. Slavoj und ich haben uns vor etlichen Jahren kennengelernt, nachdem wir gemeinsam in Buchprojekte verwickelt waren, sagen wir mal so, als mich ein Essener Buchhändler anrief und sagte, ich kann einen spannenden Gast bekommen, den mir der Verlag für eine Buchvorstellung geschickt hat und ich hätte den Mann so gern hier, doch ich kann das nicht machen. Denn die Bedingung des Verlags ist, er soll tagsüber einen Raum zum Arbeiten haben mit Internetanschluss, das war damals nicht unbedingt üblich, und er soll sich dort ausruhen können und am besten sogar eine Assistenz, denn er ist gesundheitlich angeschlagen, Herzklabaster und so weiter. Und diesen Raum kann ich nicht zur Verfügung stellen. So, bitte sehr, einmal mal. Ich räumte also mein Zimmer in unserer Villa Kunterbund auf und stellte Computer und Bett zur Verfügung. Und Sie glauben gar nicht, was er da getan hat. Er hätte sich dort erholen sollen, wollen. Nein, er hatte ganz andere Sorgen. Wo E-Mails an seine große Liebe schreiben, weit von der Senator-Lounge des Flughafens entfernt. Das war der Anfang einer wunderbaren Kollaboration und dicken Freundschaft. Und sie führte ihn, unterstützt durch mich, an das KWI, an das Kulturwissenschaftliche Institut in Essen, wo er den berühmten Kulturwissenschaftlichen Forschungspreis des Landes Nordrhein-Westfalen erhielt und einige Jahre eine Forschungsgruppe leitete, die ich, von ihm unterstützt, als wissenschaftliche Koordinatorin betreuen durfte und die ich später nach Weimar ans Nietzsche-Kolleg mitnehmen konnte. Seid ihr bitte mal so lieb. In dieser Forschungsgruppe waren nicht nur Slavojs Ljubljaner Kollegen Alenka Zupancic, Mladen Dola und Miran Bosovic und etliche andere renommierte internationale Forscherinnen wie Frederick Jameson, John Kopczak und Eric Sandner versammelt, sondern kurzzeitig auch ein Mitarbeiter der Experimentellen der Linzer Kunstuniversität. Der hatte damals gerade die Interpassivität entdeckt und profitierte von Slavojs Lacan-Kenntnissen und vor allem von seinen Witzen. Hans, bist du mal so lieb und trägst ihn einfach raus? Komm mal zu mir. Also, ich sprach natürlich von Robert Faller. Sie wissen es eben schon so. Die Forschungsgruppe hieß ganz wunderbar, alles und nichts sagend, Antinomien der postmodernen Vernunft. Nun will ich aber natürlich nicht auf die gemeinsame Arbeit eingehen. Schauen Sie einfach auf all die Publikationen, die damals beim Surkamp Verlag erschienen und die gemeinsamen Sammelbände die Ergebnisse der Tagung waren. Erinnern tue ich mich am liebsten an die Vorbereitungen zu unserer berühmt-berüchtigten Lenin-Tagung, die wir bewusst semantisch, allerdings nur im Deutschen, doppeleindeutig mit dem Titel »Gibt es eine Politik der Wahrheit?« nach Lenin nannten. Nachdem ich ein Einladungsplakat gedruckt hatte und Slavojs Ankündigungstext im Institut kursierte, wurde ich mehrfach zu Gesprächen in die Verwaltung gerufen. Ich musste eine Art Gewissensprüfung über mich ergehen lassen und von wissenschaftlichen Geschäftsführer ein extra für mich entwickeltes Schriftstück entgegennehmen, in dem ich unterschreiben musste, dass ich als Assistentin von Slavoj Žižek immer auf dem Boden des Grundgesetzes der Bundesrepublik Deutschland mich bewegen würde. Eine Art Schwur auf die Demokratie, damit ich nicht nur durch diesen Philosophen auf Abwege gelänge. Sollte mir irgendein Verstoß gegen das Grundgesetz in der Forschungsgruppe sowie während der Konferenz auffallen, sei ich verpflichtet, diesen sofort zu melden, damit die Institutsleitung einschreiten könnte. Nach jeder Sektion der Konferenz hätte ich zu informieren. Ja, das waren lustige Zeiten, nämlich ich habe das Schriftstück immer noch aufbewahrt, fast alles andere weggeschmissen, aber das gibt es noch. Die Institutsleitung kam dann auch zur großen Leninstagung im sogenannten Haus der Technik in Essen. Das war die ehemalige Börse, passenderweise zu dem Thema, und stellte schon nach der ersten Runde in der Pause gleich fest, hier passiert nichts Revolutionäres, es ist nur pure Philosophie. Mehr hätte man nicht wahrgenommen und es sei eigentlich doch langweilig. Die Herren verschwanden, hinterließen mir aber ihre Telefonnummer für notwendige Zwischenberichte. Ich wählte die Nummer nicht. Vermutlich waren sie beruhigt, da sie Slavojs Witz hörten, den er in seiner Einleitung kundtat. Und wer Slavoj Žižek kennt, der kennt auch schon diesen Witz, deswegen verzeihen Sie, aber dennoch. Marx, Engels und Lenin werden gefragt, ob sie lieber eine Ehefrau hätten oder eine Geliebte. Marx entscheidet sich für die Ehefrau, der Bohemian Engels für die Geliebte. Lenin wünscht sich sowohl als auch. Seine Begründung: Dann könne er der Geliebten erzählen, er sei bei der Gattin und er besuchte die Geliebte. In Wahrheit aber täte er immer nur das eine: lernen, lernen, lernen. Ich lernte eine Menge, nicht nur an all den Abenden, an denen wir uns gemeinsam durch meine großen historischen Filme arbeiteten, meine NS-Filmsammlung und zu viel Kuchen aßen. In dieser Zeit entstand Slavoj Kislowskis Buch Die Furcht vor echten Tränen, eines der letzten im altehrwürdigen Verlag Volk und Welt. Wir arbeiteten zu ideologischen Mechanismen der Gewalt in einem ebenso ehrwürdigen alten Kloster in Bayern, das für seine Blutwunder bekannt ist. Eric Sandner antwortete auf die Einladung zur Tagung: Liebe Anne, das habe ich jetzt wieder gefunden bei der Vorbereitung, zu dieser Schnapsidee, mit euch in ein oberschwäbisches Kloster zu ziehen, kann ich nur sagen, ist es dein Ernst? In der nächsten E-Mail hieß es dann: Liebe Anne, ich glaube, ich bin im Moment verrückt genug, deine Einladung anzunehmen. Es entstand die Übersetzung von Slavojs Stücke des Subjekts, es entstanden x weitere Bücher, Dokumentarfilme über ihn und die Hör-CD über das Überraschungsei. Der Faktor X, das Ding und die Lehre, aufgenommen im berühmten Interhotel in Berlin. Wir gingen zudem unterbrochen von Ausflügen nach Hollywood zu DDR-Filmen über und schmetterten begleitet von CDs im Autoradio DDR-Lieder. Ich wurde die Traktoristin, falls Sie diesen Ausdruck nicht kennen, jeder, der im Mittelbau arbeitet, weiß eigentlich, was das ist, wegen der Feldarbeit und man abends ins Kulturhaus gehen kann und so. Also Sie kennen vielleicht das Lied Fritz, der Traktorist. Und Slavoj wurde der Senator wegen der stolz präsentierten Senator-Card der Lufthansa. Sie merken, ich vermisse diese Zeit doch sehr. So, und anstatt nun die aktuellen Publikationen vorzustellen, möchte ich Slavoj gern selbst kurz fragen: Welches deiner letzten Bücher sollen die Leute alle umgehend kaufen? Was würdest du vorschlagen?
Die Dicke.
Das dickste. Less than nothing, okay. 1000 Seiten über Hegel, also gut. Dann bin ich nun mit Ihnen allen gespannt auf Freedom in the Clouds, einen Vortrag, der sich nicht mit Reinhard Mays über den Wolken muss die Freiheit wohl grenzenlos sein, was hier schon vermutet wurde, sondern mit der Digitalisierung des Lebens und den digitalen Wolken beschäftigt. So, how controls the clouds? Und denk dran, Slavoj, du bist nicht Fidel, hast nur 45 Minuten und nicht mehrere Stunden für den Vortrag. Danke sehr, sehr, dass du gekommen bist. Wir freuen uns sehr. Und zum Schluss mit einem Soundfile die Frage an dich, die wir mit dieser Einladung nach Linz verbinden.
Was geschieht jetzt?
Sag mir, wo du stehst. Sag mir, wo du stehst. Sag mir, wo du stehst und welchen Weg du gehst. Sag mir, wo du
Ich bin sehr froh, dass ich hier bin. Ich war schon vor über 10 Jahren, das war noch Robert Faller-Ära, jetzt gibt es Reinkarnationen von Robert Faller hier und so weiter. Und es ist schön hier zu sein. Leider muss ich jetzt auf die Sprache des Imperialismus wechseln. No. Thank you for nice introduction, but nonetheless, I must correct you. You said that I'm ein Verfechter der Punktualität. Pünktlichkeit. Verfechter means like that I oppose it. No, absolutely, I'm for it. My motto in love life was always, my fiancée is never late for an appointment. Because the moment she is late, she is no longer my fiancée. You know, elementary. Yeah, okay. So let me go on. The idea to give this title came to me through a friendship of mine. Strangely enough, I have the honor of being a personal friend of Julian Assange. And he is now approaching a crisis, I think. I mean, you know, let me amuse you for 5 minutes, then we go into more serious work. I visited him, I'm still under the impression, 4 days ago in London to make an interview, and it's pretty tragic, you know, so that you will not have a wrong idea. Ecuadorian embassy, the only good thing about it is the location. It's just behind the Harrods megastore, no? But it's like sleeping with a naked woman and you are not allowed to touch her because he cannot, and so that you don't have a wrong idea, Ecuadorian embassy is just a 5, maybe 6 room apartment, not even an entire floor of a building, and he is not allowed, so there is no small garden where he can take a walk. He cannot even step on the corridor where you enter the apartment. There are always 2 policemen there. So he literally, for almost a year and a half now, didn't step out. And it's pretty paranoid because the friendly staff of the embassy showed me everything and him. There are 12 policemen night and day observing him. 2 in front, 1 in the back, because the embassy is on high, but nonetheless, how to call it, ground level, which means there is a window in the toilet and theoretically you can jump out. So there is one always just close to the window when he goes to the toilet. There are 2 cars. Then if you observe carefully houses around, you see that in different corridors with large windows, there are always people observing him. 12 policemen, they work in shifts of 8 hours, which means 36 people are fully employed just to there physically. Then the apartment below and the apartment above, everyone knows is controlled by British police. Although formally there are some, I don't know, Emirate rich princes who own it. And of course, what happens is that every couple of days they have to check it, but still, probably, namely, you know, all the time they are drilling holes, those secret cameras, microphones, whatever you want, even for him to get an access to email. They obviously put some, I don't know, viruses or whatever, some mechanism so that his email is extremely small. Like he wanted to show me some video clip of 2 minutes and in 20 minutes we were not able to download it and so on. Now you will say, if you are a feminist, and I am, now you will say, but okay, nonetheless, he did nasty things in Sweden, because this is the legal fiction. He is there under control because he took refuge there not to be delivered to Sweden. But you know the joke, already media misreported when they claim he is accused of rape. This is simply not true. He showed me all documents. The Swedish police, after 2 years now, doesn't have even enough data to accuse him of rape. Officially, they just want him for some examination, to ask him some questions. And now come the beautiful jokes. The 2 women complained, okay, even if what they say is true, it's rape in a purely technical sense. For example, one woman claims that they were making love. She admits it openly. She even admits that she seduced him. But the point is that then in the middle of the act, I cannot even imagine what passionate things they were doing, his condom slipped off and then he didn't put it on again. It's things like this. So can you imagine the legal fiction? Because he doesn't want to come to Sweden to be questioned about this, the British state is employing 50 people. And they pretend, because you know, this is the only legal ground on which they hold him. Now, let's go to political correctness. The situation is totally crazy because the two women explicitly said it's not a rape. So you know the usual story, and here I'm, of course, totally on women's side, is that a woman complains there was a rape, and then, you know, the male chauvinists they are, the police is skeptical, you know, all this bullshit. Are you sure it was a rape, that you didn't solicit it, that you didn't secretly enjoy it, even if you were beaten, or all that stuff? But here is the unique case of the opposite paradox. The women claim it wasn't a rape. It's only the police which claims it was a rape. I mean, it's madness. And he explained to me the law, and here you can see what is wrong with political correctness. Namely, Sweden has a crazy law which was only adopted for some time by Israel, but even they dropped it. The point was clear there, to prevent in Israel sex between Jewish girls and Palestinians. Namely, the law says that if, when in the process of seduction, you tell to your partner a lie or imply something that is not true, which for the partner may be a key data, some key data, then even if the partner rapes you, as it were, you are technically a rapist. So the idea is this one in Sweden. Of course, I agree with this law insofar as it refers, let's say, to HIV, to AIDS, that you don't tell your partner. But there were cases in Sweden, I was told, where, for example, it was simply a question of religion, no? Let's say I'm trying, sorry for the male chauvinist example, to seduce a girl and I know she doesn't like Catholics. So I pretend that I'm a Protestant. Okay, we have sex, everything okay. 2 weeks later, she discovers that I am a Catholic. My act technically becomes a rape. And you know, now I come to the bureaucratic beauty. Here things get serious. Julian Assange showed me the document. You know, they didn't yet do it, but they seriously consider now, it's already circulating in political sphere, a kind of a document for lovers. Let's say I and my partner, we meet in a bar and we want to do it, sex. So it's simple. There is a forum where each of us puts his name, birth date, religion, illnesses, and so on. We both sign it, and then we can do it freely. No, I like this bureaucratic approach, and so on. No, but seriously, the true problem here, I claim, this brings us to something crucial, is the deep ambiguity of political correctness, for example, of claiming that of this obsession on harassment. I claim, of course, I am against harassment when we talk about, I don't know, brutal rape and so on. But the way the term harassment effectively functions at least in United States, it's really something like a cover name for any moment when another human being comes libidinally, emotionally too close to you. It's this primordial fear that others don't come too close to you. And I think this is a general tendency today. Let me improvise a little bit and give you some examples. And I'm not bluffing here. I'm lucky to have a friend among Hollywood producers, although he lost a job. I hope not. It's James Shamus, who was the boss of Focus Pictures. He was simply fired. It's very sad, because even if his films were making money, they were not considered mainstream enough and so on. But what he told me is that this is I don't know if you noticed it. Did you see, not the last one, but one before the last one, James Bond, Quantum of Solace? It's a pretty good film. I mean, politically, I'm not saying great film, but like, politically, you know what James Bond does there? A simple story. He saves the presidency of Evo Morales from a right-wing coup. What more do you want? But did you notice it's the first James Bond film where at the end there is no sex? You know, it was the iconic image in all James Bond films. At the end, finally, James Bond is alone with the Bond girl, they do it. And then it was the usual gag that when they are doing it, they all of a sudden observe them, some satellite is watching them, whatever. In this one, there is no sex. They just embrace each other, they are too desperate, they part. Another, and here I'm speaking about the lowest of the lowest, I even hate it. Did you see the last Dan Brown film, which is Angels and Demons? Here things are even more weird. Don't kill yourself, you didn't miss a great work of art. But what I'm saying is that here things are even more strange. In the novel, there is sex between Langdon Tom Hanks and that Vittoria Vetra, Italian scientist, who is his partner. But in the film, they erase sex. I mean, where is Hollywood coming when, you know, when I was young, the myth was Hollywood always adds sex to make it more commercial. Now Hollywood is dropping sex. And James Shamus told me that there is a kind of what Louis Althusser called idéologie spontanée, spontaneous ideology, which is totally part of this Western Buddhist pseudo-Dalai Lama stuff, that it's not good to get too attached to worldly object, which means to another person. The new ethic is the ethics of restraint. If I may repeat my eternal joke, in the same way that we are solicited to have, I don't know, beer without alcohol, coffee without caffeine, sausage without fat, chocolate without sugar, and so on. The idea is to have almost sex without sex. You shouldn't fall yourself too much into it, which is why here I follow my good friend Alain Badiou. I think that his book on love, a short one, was translated auf Deutsche. It's where he draws attention to a wonderful detail, if you noticed it, that unfortunately it doesn't work, I think, in German, but it works in French and in English. The expression is to fall in love, tomber l'amour. Now, but you noted an agency, publicity agency for this, sex advice, marriage advice, and then I found the same one in the United States, which plays on this ambiguity and says, we will enable you to find yourself in love without the falling. You know, the idea is that, you know, what makes the magic of love? You walk along the street, you sleep, somebody helps you, you look at it, it's the woman or man, whatever, or dog of my life, and then, you know, this miracle of opening yourself in all contingency to another, this is considered too risky. It has to be prepared by experts. And it's not a joke. But you told me, but this looks to me like we are discovering the ancient art, pre-romantic of you know, relatives, uncles preparing, organizing marriage. Yes, but today it's not elder-wise relatives, it's experts and so on. No, but quite seriously, what I find behind this is this fear of, like, opening yourself to another. I think this is what I find very suspicious, for example, in the process of seduction. I claim, and I had great debates here, but interestingly enough, even most of the feminists agreed with me in the United States that if you apply the strict politically correct rules, no harassment, everything should be consensual and so on, then there is no seduction, except, and even a very bourgeois feminist like Naomi Wolf, not Klein, wrote about it nicely, where she said that if you read this utmost politically correct advices how to make love without anyone being hurt, you end up in a pure contractual merchandise universe. You must negotiate in advance. You can put your finger in there, but only half. Everything negotiated in advance. In other words, I claim in authentic love, seduction, there has to be a moment, and isn't this the ambiguous beauty of seduction? At some point, at least someone has to make the risky move, where you expose yourself. And it's up to the other then to decide. Will he or she accept it, or will he shout, no, you are harassing me, or whatever? But it doesn't go without this risky moment. So again, I claim, and this is part of a larger analysis, that, this is why, and I will, at the end, if there will be time, return to this. This is where Iberich, superego function, this logic of the more you try to be innocent, the more you follow the law, the more you are guilty. Where do we find superego today? For example, in ecology. No, I'm for ecology. Totally. I mean, for ecology in the sense that I believe it's a threat and so on. What I'm saying is that what I totally oppose is what I call, and all intelligent ecologists know, this is our greatest danger, the, let's call it, everyday way of life ecology. Instead of seriously asking big questions, how to reorganize our economy, you have this everyday individualized terror. Did you recycle all the newspapers? Did you throw all the Coca-Cola cans in a special way? In this way, this is a very tricky procedure, because on the one hand, you are immediately culpabilized as an individual, And then, when you start to raise big questions, this voice of society tells you, but who are you to ask this question? First, clean your own garden. Are you doing this correctly? And so on. Second thing, in this way, it's very easy for you to feel good. You just separate all Coca-Cola cans, and then you can say, you see, I did something great to save Earth Mother. I love children, but just a free association. Whenever I am on a transatlantic flight, and there is a child like that, I think they should pass a law that all children less than 6 years old should be put with an injection put to sleep for just a free association, sorry. No, let me go on. What I want to say is that, you see, and our friend, the already mentioned Robert Faller, developed this nicely, how consumerism is a very deceiving name. We live apparently in a consumerist society, but the most prohibited thing is to be a true radical consumerist. Like, you go to the end, you smoke, you drink, you take drugs. No, the whole point is how to retain a measure, how to control it. This is why in Slovene, our young Lacanian theorist wrote a wonderful text on smoking. Don't misunderstand me. I don't smoke, I agree. Tobacco companies should be punished, whatever. But nonetheless, I think there is something deeply ideological in our obsession with smoking. I think that for multitude of reasons, smoking was selected as the symbol of, one of the public symbols, much more than drugs. For example, I noticed this clear contradiction with American left liberals. They are all horrified by the very idea of smoking, but drugs are a different story. Drug is subversive and so on. Smoking is horrible. Like this Lacanian colleague of ours did a wonderful thing. She just looked into Hollywood and, in the good old years, 1940s, well, smoking was not only one of the standard procedures of seduction, but even one of the first breakthroughs of very modest, feminism. Lorraine Bacall asking Humphrey Bogart to lighten her cigarette. That was one of the key moments, I'm not joking, of feminine emancipation. I mean that the woman can make the move. Today, who smokes? And systematically, this text proves this. Today, it's mostly serial killers and terrorists to calm themselves before they explode themselves. You know, they are the only remaining smokers. And it's incredible how far this obsession goes. Do you know that, for example, in the United States are now seriously, James Shamus, the producer, told me this, seriously considering the idea of digitally changing old films to erase smoking. I mean, Comrade Stalin is coming alive again, you know. No, and if you think this is a joke, they already did it. I quote this in one of my books. There was in 60s, they put a stamp, first post stamp, United States Post put it on the market of Jackson Pollock, of course, with a cigarette. 5 years later, the cigarette disappeared. They retouched it, they erased it, and so on. So again, when the Guardian, the magazine, asked me, how do I, maybe you know the story, but I like it so much, I want to repeat it. How do I imagine the ideal future sex, where we are going? And I still stick to it. That's our direction. How to do it so that nobody is hurt, and so on. First, of course, you replace real partner with some plastic machine and so on. But then let's go to the end in this direction. My idea was this one. Let's say I flirt with the lady and we decide to do it. Okay, I come with a dildo plastic vibrator, which she comes, you can also buy them today with a, it's a very vulgar German term that they time use. I found it even horrible to pronounce it, vagina roar, you know, like but they are very nicely made. I checked up once, because you can regulate the tightness, you can put different faces on it, more hair, less hair, you can imitate all three openings, you can put on the top anal opening, vagina, mouth, and you can regulate it. So the ideal date for day would have been, the lady comes, we sit down, we put on electricity both apparatuses, we put my plastic dildo into her plastic vagina, and we turn the machine on, and the apparatus are there buzzing, doing the work, and I can have a nice tea with the lady, we talk, and so on. And okay, where is here romantic love? I think it's possible. Why? Because in this way, as Robert Fowler would have put it, interpassivity, the machines are already doing the duty of enjoying. So let's say I talk with the lady, our hands touch, and then maybe we end up in bed, but it would be real sex, you know, not the superego pressure we have to enjoy, and so on and so on. But nonetheless, back to all this. Okay, now forget about freedom in clouds, let it stay up there in clouds. Maybe I would prefer to follow this way. Namely, there are a couple of lessons here. And then maybe we will return to this. Yes, the first of this all superego logic that we have today. The first one, and I here directly refer to your founding father, Robert Fowler, again, he developed this very nicely. How, and I think this is crucial to analyze our so-called consumerism today, I'm very serious now, how our most intense pleasures, apparently the most transgressive pleasures, are not spontaneous outbursts. They are always learned, symbolically constructed transgressions. Fowler himself, Robert, gave me this example, maybe he already used it somewhere. Let's say, remember and be honest. How did you smoke or take a hard drink, whiskey, vodka, or what do you do here? You drink those horrible things like Jägermeister or what? All the admit it. It was, you were a young kid and a friend of yours maybe want to years later told you, you know what adults are drinking, and he gave you, and the first taste was horrible, it was bitter and so on. I mean, if you want pleasure, you drink some stupid fruit juice or whatever. But then you get used to it. But the first reaction is always, and admit it was the same with smoking, if you smoke. Somebody tells you, you know what adults are doing, try a cigarette, and first you cough, you find it not tasty. So the general conclusion, again, I want to develop from this, is that precisely these excessive moments of intense enjoyment are cultural acquisition. They are learned. They are not the explosion of some raw nature. And I will give you, maybe I'm a perverted freak here, but I will give you an example from my own life. Swearing, talking dirty. You may think that, you know, you speak in a polite way, but then the other guy annoys you, gets so stupid that you explode and start to shout at him dirty words. That's not my experience. With my friends, and I'm asking around, I'm not alone at least in this madness, it's the exact opposite. When I meet with my friends, we have some kind of necessary, obligatory ritual. For the first 10 minutes, we just insult each other. And we did it roughly, you know. I come from Balkan, and our jokes come from Serbia. Like, my standard beginning in, I will dig your dead mother out of her grave and fuck her into her sagging breasts and so on. It can be very... Then after 10 minutes of this, we look at each other and we say, okay, this is getting boring, we did our duty, and now we can talk like normal, kind persons that we are. And it absolutely works like this, you know. It's as if you got rid of some obscene, weird compulsion, almost duty, you know. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because I claim that what is, as a rule, repressed is precisely this social, symbolic, ritualized aspect of our violences. Let me give you two examples, maybe you know about them from both sides of the United States. You know, Ciudad Juarez is a Mexican city just on the other side of El Paso, United States. It's one of the world capital of this fast assembling industry. Parts made in Chinese gulag, I don't know where, but you know what we learned 2 days ago, if you allow me this detour, that you don't have to China to find Chinese gulags. You find them 10 kilometers from the center of Firenze, of Florence, you know. So this is where, if you allow me a small detour, this is why I still have an appreciation, even if he is a right-winger, more or less politically, for Peter Sloterdijk. I mean, I don't agree with this official Frankfurter Schule denunciation, Sloterdijk, she wants some new eugenics or whatever, terror. No, in his book on the interior of capital, he does a very intelligent thing. He applies his notion, which I otherwise find a little bit boring, of global cupola, dome, sphere, on capital, and claims that global capitalism is not really open. Global capitalism is a global sphere. And once we are inside, we behave as if it is open. But we don't even see that his numbers are like 1/4 of the people are inside, the others are out. So that's for me crucial, you know. They were there, only in that city of Prado or what, there are 15,000 legally registered Chinese workers. The gulag is gulag, okay, half slavery is here. We just don't see it. Or pretend not to see it, whichever way you want. And this is why, incidentally, I like good Hollywood films. Because, you know, like when friends tell me, how can you be so stupid as to still be a communist? Who talks today about class struggle and so on? This is passé. I tell them, well, at least big Hollywood blockbusters are on my side. My God, did you see Elysium with Matt Damon? Unfortunately, it's not a good film, but it's extreme class struggle. The elite lives up there Did you see Hunger Games? It's extreme class struggle. Not only this post-apocalyptic adventure films. But even, I know this from my son, young one, who plays them all the time, but even the best, at least for me, computer games. The formula emerging is, after the fall of civilization in some post-apocalyptic world, there is an extremely brutal class division, and so on and so on. So, and incidentally, you know where it all began? This would be maybe the first Sloterdijk film. Maybe if you are old enough, you remember it, or at least maybe you heard about it. John Borman, Zardoz, from Bayweg, I think early 70s or when. It's again a post-apocalyptic world. The privileged elite lives in a great dome, and wild people, half animals, are outside, and so on and so on. I think we are gradually approaching this type of the world, where the distinction is even much stronger, I would have said, than the classical Marxist distinction of, okay, I'm tautological now, of classes. Because, you know, Marx's idea was that while politically, socially, or at least politically, we all belong to the same state as equal citizens, legally the same rights and so on, it's just that the true relations of domination are reproduced at economic level. We are legally or equal, but I own a factory, you don't, so you have to work for me. But today I claim it's a much more radical distinction that is emerging, where those who are outside, as Sloterdijk would have put it, out of cupola, even politically no longer belong into the same cultural, political, whatever universe. They are really out. And I claim that the prospective of biogenetics is that, my God, if you ask me, is that the ruling class is even gradually becoming almost a new race. I think that we are very close to when I was in China, and China is at the forefront here, you know. When I was in China, my friends showed me there some ultra expensive clinics in the suburbs of Shanghai, where already rich people from the West go there, and, you know, when the woman is still pregnant, they do all the tests, they already do all the genetic manipulations or whatever, and so on and so on. The rich are literally already breeding as a separate race, and Chinese are just trying to develop this to the end. That is to say, it's, I quote it in one of my books, it's a pretty shattering document that they showed me there. The official program of Chinese Academy of Sciences about biogenetics. The first phrase shocked me. It says, the goal of biogenetics in People's Republic of China is to monitor and regulate the physical and the psychic health of Chinese people. So they quite, in unashamed way, they aim also at, as far as it's possible, at psychological regulation and so on and so on. So, okay, all this cupola stuff, let me return to my point, which is this brutal, violent, excess transgression. First, I must tell you, always I was suspicious of this, let's call it carnivalesque left. You know, like the idea is our enemy is the stiff hierarchic order. We need fresh air. We need some clown-like amusement, confusion of social hierarchy, and so on and so on. My problem with this is that, at least I think, and this was my very friendly polemic with the Pussy Riot girl Nadezhda Tolokonnikova, I think that today's capitalism quite well already works like that. I have here a nice minor proof. You know, the most popular, the crucial theorist of carnival, of all this idea, of the idea that carnival is the moment of liberation, where, you know, king becomes a beggar, beggar becomes a king, the authorities are subverted, all the roles mix, is Mikhail Bakhtin, in his book, the work of François Rabelais, written in the mid-30s. Now, the guy whom you know, Boris Groys, you did a book with him, no? Like, almost like my Less Than Nothing, this 1,000 pages with Zurkam, no? Told me that they now located some papers of Bakhtin preparatory papers for writing his book on Carnival. And it's absolutely clear from those papers what was his model for Carnival. Not some liberating popular experience, but Stalinist purges. This is the true Carnival. Today you are a member of the Central Committee, tomorrow you are an English spy in Gulag. No, this is how it turns. So you know what I want to say is that the tragedy of the left for me today is precisely this Carnival problem. You know, it's relatively easy, and it's still nice when it happens, to organize the big carnivalesque reunion, like Egypt, Tahrir Square, 1 million people, okay, not quite, but nonetheless, all there together, we millions watch it on TV, we all cry, how beautiful, sublime unity, and so on. But I'm obsessed with what, in alcoholic terms, you call the morning after. You know, after a week, month, 2, life returns to normal. And this, I think, is the key test for every revolution, revolt, whatever we call it. It's easy to have that sentimental moment, but what will be the consequences in everyday life? And I'm not here a total pessimist. For example, French 68, it did leave some consequences. Women are treated in a different way. To put it in quite superficial terms, there are some public statements about how you talk about women, about homosexuals, which, and it's a good thing, which simply you cannot talk in that way after 68. So it did change Sitten, the public mores, public morality. Even in Egypt, I'm not saying after Mubarak it's even worse. No, as friends from Egypt are telling me, the Egyptian society is not the same. You have now a whole network of trade unions, women's organizations, student organizations, and so on. The society is alive. But nonetheless, don't you think this is the tragedy for the left? For example, when I remember till 6, 7, 8 years ago, when we lived in relatively stable prosperity, no? Leftists, radical leftists were all the time saying, this is a superficial apparent prosperity. Wait a minute, there will be a crisis, then the truth will hit us. Okay, there was a crisis, and what? Where was left with any viable, consistent alternative program? I don't see it, and I spent literally days on inquiring into this. I was on Occupy Wall Street, I was in Frankfurt, in London, and so on. And I was just like an idiot asking people this Freudian question, was will das Weib? What do you want, protesters? It's interesting, now mostly they dismissed me as some kind of police provocateur, no? But then what I got from them was either these flat stupidities, you know, like we want money to serve people and not people to serve money. Well, my reaction was Adolf Hitler, your great citizen who went here to high school, no? Hitler would have totally agreed with it, probably, no? Because he would say, when people serve money, they serve the Jews who control money, or whatever, no? So what I'm saying is that, and then if you go further, it's just some kind of vague Keynesianism. We have to control banks, we have to make capitalism more human. And now to avoid a misunderstanding, I'm not making fun of these people. The problem is not that they are idiots. The problem is that obviously we cannot yet imagine an alternative. It's still unimaginable. And I think we should here go to the end and admit that the 20th century is over, not only the 20th century of Stalinist communism, but also obviously we cannot simply return to social democratic welfare state, and especially, I claim, the last thing we should renounce, although it's nice when it happens. You know, the last myth of today's radical leftists is this idea of locally people self-organize, communes, councils, immediate transparent democracy, workers take over a factory, or as Negri would have put it, multitude, molecular organization, anti-hierarchic, not from above, and all that stuff. Well, my comment is, it's nice when it happens, but I don't think for theoretical reasons that it has the potential for universality. I don't think then that we can really imagine that then gradually, you know, multitude logic of self-organization from below will take over the entire society. I think this cannot happen, and I think that precisely today, with regard to problems that we are facing, ecology, new forms of apartheid, biogenetics, intellectual property, and so on, large-scale reorganization is needed. Because again, I had a friendly polemic briefly some 2-3 years ago with Negri, and my question to him was the following one. All examples that you enumerate of multitude presuppose a large, pretty well functioning state apparatus, which provides the background so that multitudes can play their games. And I asked him a question, could you give me one example of a multitude which did not demand a well-organized state? You know what was his answer? The Chinese Great Cultural Revolution. I agreed, but I said, you know, okay, no state, but there was the big boss, Mao Zedong, my God, no, you know. And this brings me to my next point, just to provoke you a little bit. I think we should rehabilitate the notion of master, Herrschaft. Don't be afraid, I'm not a secret Stalinist. I'm not saying we need a new comrade, leader, whatever. No, what should be this new master? Listen, the big illusion for me is that we are free. We are free. We think we are free, but precisely when we have, if there is something depressive about our, however we call it, postmodern predicament, is that we think that we are free and we even, how should I put it, don't notice how controlled, trained we are. This is for me, incidentally, I make now a brief return to Assange. This is why I think what Assange and his gang and all their friends from Manning to Snowden are doing is so important. They really fight for what Immanuel Kant called the public use of reason. And you know that when Kant in his Was ist Aufklärung introduces this term, you know that he uses it in a very nice paradoxical way. Public use of reason is not the state versus the private. State is for Kant exemplarily a private organization. Because when you use your reason for state as a lawyer, theologist, it's always subordinated to some pre-existing goals set by the state. While, as Kant put it, when intellectuals meet in private debates outside state, you have no constraints, this is public use of reason. And I claim that the idea of people around Assange and all of them is what? They are well aware of the problem, which is that, and they admit it when I talked with Assange, for example, 4 days ago, that we should not just focus on the United States. They are all doing it. But nonetheless, we should also target United States. What? Let's compare United States and China, and let's be fair. Just imagine someone like Manning in China. There would have been no trial, and probably all his relatives would also disappear in Gulag or whatever. No illusions about that. But there is one thing which is different in China. Does he disagree with me or what? He defends China or what? Okay, sorry. It's that in China, at least you don't have an illusion that you are free. People very well know there is a limit there. Well, what is so dangerous, I love United States, it's a great nation and so on, but what is so dangerous is that, and this is the big disclosure of Snowden, Manning, how tightly controlled and regulated can also be a society in which people don't even notice that they are controlled. And there are different strategies of this control. For example, I'll give you another example of, Yes, first a story which illustrates this. Speaking about biogenetic threat, this is my favorite story. I apologize if you already know it. Some friends of mine know people at New York University who made a certain cognitive bio-neurological experiment, and now I know a friend in Germany who his group repeated it. It's for me a pretty terrifying experiment. They took some relatively primitive animals like rats, and they were able to decode neuronal signals that their brain sends to their legs in what direction how to walk. It's very primitive, but somehow they managed to decode this forward, left, right, whatever. And they then connected these neuronal channels to a computer. And I have it on videotape. It's pretty horrifying. You have a rat freely jumping around in a room. Then you press a button and a rat becomes a remote control car. You can direct it, how it goes. Now they told me, now comes my point. They told me discreetly that they didn't want to go into the public, but that they are, of course, already trying to do the same experiments on people, humans. And with a specific goal, they are asking the right question. What interests them is the following. Let's say I'm this type of a human rat. No? Who is evil here? You, Anna, maybe. No, I just walk around, then you press the button, you direct me. The problem is, how will I experience it? Will it be, oh my God, I'm no longer myself, some foreign force took it over? Or will I still think that I'm free? They hinted at me, the answer is the second one, it's horrible. I will still experience it as if, I just do what I want. So maybe, go back to China, maybe it's a little bit like this, that the Chinese rats at least know that they are controlled, while we still think we walk around. No? So, but nonetheless, and Assange is aware of this, the important thing is how to break out of this humiliating game that, like to save Snowden, you had to make a compromise with Putin's Russia, and they have no illusions. But it's a question of survival. Fuck it, you have to save the guy. And the idea is now, and here I will write something, try to publish in many big media. The idea is the only solution that we see is some kind of people's encyclopedia, big website, international organization. They're already trying to do it, where, you click the name of a state law, that where it should be available to people how all these state apparatuses, especially in this case, intelligence, diplomacy, army, how they function. So that people should at least know it. That somehow it is present to you, all this obscure background. Why? Because, and here again, the Chinese lead the way. My favorite piece of news lately on China is, a friend told me this, what happened to a dissident in China. One local dissident sent some data about some pollution, blah, 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 to foreign media, and he was arrested for revealing state secrets. Okay, nothing new. What's new is that he then protested and asked which laws did he violate. You know what was the answer? It's a state secret also. So you see, it's not only that you are controlled by prohibitions, but what is prohibited is itself a state secret. This is Kafka already. This is basically, we are in Kafka's universe, because Kafka was the first to announce this publicly. The whole mystery of bureaucracy, it's not a tight law which controls you. No, you don't even know what the law says. And I claim that this is how, now I'm jumping a little bit back to superego, this is how I claim our, maybe not laws, but at least public morality functions more and more. More and more often in our social life, we emulate, we imitate a feature which was already present in Soviet Union. I'm sorry if I repeat an old story, but it's again the ideal one. Imagine, such a nice dream, that we are in Moscow 37. I sacrifice myself, I am Stalin, no? Okay, you are Central Committee, we have a debate. I give my big boring speech, you applaud for 10 minutes till I tell you to stop, the usual story. Then, let's say there is an idiot among you, idiot in the naive good sense, who stands up, announces himself he wants to debate and criticizes me. Of course, it's not very wise, no? Like, next day everyone will be asking who was the last one to see that guy alive. But now let's imagine another thing, that another of you stands up and starts to shout at that guy, "Are you crazy? We don't criticize here, Comrade Stalin. This is prohibited." I claim he would disappear even faster. You see, it wasn't only prohibited to criticize Stalin. It was prohibited to announce publicly this prohibition. And for example, although she is sometimes my theoretical enemy, here I agree with Judith Butler, who pointed out that this is how today, for example, male domination functions. It's no longer the old male master who orders the woman or whatever. It's no, we are colleagues and so on. Just please, I'm tired, wash my socks or whatever. But you know, it's all done, or this is a typical, in this ultra-modern dynamic company's digital company boss. He pretends to be your friend. You come to the job, he embraces you. Did you have a good sex last night, whatever. Pretends to be your equal, but he still is the boss. You see, the trick is that, and Judith is quite right to say that the first step of liberation is to force the boss to behave like one. The truly subversive thing here is to say to the boss, don't fuck me with your equality. You are my boss, so please act like one. And this is also the trauma of Kafka. Kafka is not simply in a stupid way anti-authoritarian. It's very interesting to read Kafka's letter to his father, you know, the legendary one. Read it in detail. And you will see that Kafka's reproach to his father is not, you are too authoritarian, but that you are a ridiculous clown. His letter is paradoxically a call for authentic authority. Now, I'm not saying that I desire authentic authority. No. All I'm saying is that in order to subvert authority, you must first, you know, like if I may use again the metaphor of a rat, to force a rat to come into the open. Can I repeat another old joke of mine, which perfectly renders this point of where permissivity can also function as an even more oppressive authority? I'm sorry if you know it, it's in my book that you mentioned, Die Tücke des Subjekts. Imagine it's Sunday afternoon and you are a young girl, boy, whatever, small one, and your father wants you to visit the grandmother. If you have a traditional father, he will simply tell you, I think, the right thing. Listen, it's your duty to go to the grandmother. I don't know what you think, behave properly there. Not bad, I think. Why? Because basically if you protest, it will be good. You know, like in this way, this open authority allows you the space to be against it, to protest, and so on. But then comes the horror called postmodern permissive father. What will he tell you? He will not tell you you have to visit grandmother. He will tell you some bullshit like this. You know how your grandmother loves you. You know how much your grandmother wants you to visit her, but nonetheless, you should visit her only if you really want to. You see what's the trick? Apparently he is giving you a choice, but the true order is a much harsher one. Beneath the appearance of choice, the true order is, I don't only want you to visit your grandmother, I want you to freely want to visit your grandmother. And this is for me the very focus of power. No power can be simply authoritarian. At some point, it wants from you the appearance of free choice. So if I conclude, I can go on, but there is the Black Witch terrorist there. The ultra-ideological experience that I had is a friend of mine. It's an old story, but I used it 20 years ago in a book, so I hope you don't know it. When there was still Yugoslav army, a friend of mine was serving the army and proved me with the document what happened to him. You know, I don't know how it is our army, but in Yugoslav army it was still universal conscription. First you were there for a week or two, basic training, and then there was the festive moment where you all swear fidelity, yes, I'm ready to sacrifice my life for my country, and then you sign it and you are a full soldier. So when this moment came, you approach the officer to sign your name. My friend did something ingeniously simple. He asked the officer, is this my signing kit, obligatory or not? The officer said, no, it's a free act. My friend said, okay, if it's a free act, I will not do it. The officer told him, are you crazy? You will be arrested. And they went on like this, and you know what was the deal? And I have a photocopy of this document. The deal was that the officer wrote to my friend an order, I, officer blah blah, order you to freely sign that document. He got the founding gesture of ideology, as it were, you know. So again, you see, if you approach today's authority in this way, in view of all these paradoxes, you get a much more complex picture. It's not simply old authority versus new permissivity. The first thing to add, which I tried often to develop in detail, is if there is one thing that our entire consumerist society demonstrates, is how right Jacques Lacan was when he claimed that Dostoevsky was wrong in his, if there is no God, then everything is permitted. No, sorry, that is the correct one, that if there is, yes, no God, then everything is permitted. Lacan says no. If there is no God, then everything is prohibited. And Lacan claims every neurotic demonstrates this. And I totally agree. When I was in New York, when it was fashionable, I visited on Christopher Street with friends those radical gay circles. I haven't seen people who lived a more disciplined, controlled lives. Yes, they were free to do whatever they wanted, but political correctness, fitness, what they eat, and so on and so on, their life was totally regulated. And on the opposite, I claim the opposite is also true, at least for certain religion, namely that if there is God, then everything is permitted. Of course, it's not enough to say there is God. If you make that perverse step, not only to claim that there is God, but that you have a privilege linked to God and you can function as instrument of God. Then, of course, you have what Kierkegaard called the religious suspension of the ethical, but not in the authentic Kierkegaardian sense, but in this simple, brutal sense. If I'm an instrument on God's will, then of course I can kill and so on and so on. So again, we have all these paradoxes which are even clinically confirmed. My friends are telling me, real psychoanalysts, not idiots like me who just do theory, that the typical guilt today of a patient is no longer guilt of, I have horrible sinful desires or morally reprehensible, so I feel guilty. No, you feel guilty for not being able to enjoy. It's literally that. And so that not being able to sexually enjoy is felt as if you compromised with some kind of obscene duty. Enjoyment is perceived as duty, which is why, as some Lacanians put it years ago in a very subtle way, today the psychoanalyst is not the one who, you are impotent whatever, then you go to him, you get rid of your obstacles and you can... No, the message of psychoanalysts today is you are not obliged to enjoy. You don't have to enjoy. This doesn't mean you should not enjoy. But you see, you don't have to enjoy. To get out of this cycle of superego. And to really conclude, it's good for your weight that you stand up a little bit. I wanted to conclude with this, but I don't have time. There is a wonderful Slovene film from early 50s, one of the first film of the freedom of the young generation called Vesna, where basically the plot is this one. Two young lovers escape, and their relatives and parents, I simplify it very much, think that they are getting pregnant for illicit sex. So all the neighbors start to talk, oh, this horrible young generation, they really, you cannot trust them. They think, okay. Then they return back home, and it's clear that there was no sex. And the same noisy neighbors who were before complaining now say, you see, young men are today totally ignorant, they don't even know how to make a girl pregnant and so on, they are useless and so on. And I think that the whole superego logic relies on this subtle balance. Something is prohibited, but between the lines you are really expected to do it. Or the other way around, for me, a much more interesting phenomenon. You are officially asked to do something, but you are between the lines expected not to do it. You know, this is my old joke, 20 years. For example, when I was a young, poor student, somebody invited me to dinner out. You know what is the ritual when the bill arrives? You have to pretend, oh, let me pay, and so on. We both know that he will pay. But it's a ritual. And I know how costly this ritual can be, because once a friend said, okay, if you want, you pay. Then, of course, I had to pretend, oh my God, I forgot money at home, whatever. But there are many, many situations like this where you are offered something, but you are expected to reject it. In some of my books, I use a nice example, I think, something that happened to me and above mentioned already, Judith Butler. Once, I admit it, no, the bad guy in the story, it's me, I used a brutal word in front of her for homosexuals, and it was tasteless. I knew that I shouldn't have done it. So after it was in a hotel, I called her to her room and I apologized. And she told me, Slavoj, listen, we know what type of a person you are, that we know you didn't really mean it evil, so really, we are friends, you don't owe me an apology. But evil guy as I am, you know what was then I tempted to do, but didn't, to say, okay, fuck you, if it's not needed, then I take back the apology. This would have been wrong. Why? Because you see this beautiful paradox. When you offer an apology to someone, the sign that apology is really accepted is that the other guy say, it's okay, I don't need any apology. If the other says, yeah, I bloody well deserve this apology, this means he or she is still bitter, the apology didn't work. You see the paradox. Something works precisely insofar as it is proclaimed superfluous. But to function as superfluous, it first has to happen. So you see what I'm trying to tell you, that if you want to get at all the intricacy of how morals, customs function today, you have to take into account this subtle ambiguity. Just one more. One more, okay. But one, big one, okay. No, short one. To give you a wonderful example of this, it's a stupid commercial film, but I almost enjoyed it. Did you see it? It was a moderate hit about a year and a half ago, I think. Project X. It's a crazy film, American, about a group of nerds, ugly high school people who, to regain popularity among friends, organize a big party at home. And they sent around on email news, okay, come to our place. And this is based on a real event. You remember it was in the news about 2 years ago that a modest girl, this is reality, it's crazy, in Belgium, I think, just emailed a couple of friends, come to my evening, at the end 60,000 people arrive. You know, the whole, okay, so it's similar here, but now comes the crucial moment. This is how superego functions. He organizes the ugly boy in the film, the party on Saturday or Friday night, because he knows that his father will go to some trip with his mother. He will be alone. So before leaving, his father tells him, only in the living room, maximum 5 people, just beer, not alcohol, don't touch my car, don't go to the swimming pool. Okay, what happens is 5,000 people arrive, the house is burned, the car is ruined, everything goes wrong. Then comes the beauty. Even I was surprised. When father on Monday returns and he sees police helicopters, emergency, he steps to his son and says, you know, you did something bad, you will have to work for years to repay it. But after saying this, he steps closer and says, but I didn't expect you to be daring enough to do something like this. You did it, I'm proud of this. You know, this is how true paternal authority functions. You know, this ambiguity, do it but out of my sight. And this is from the very beginning part of authority. Speak to any intelligent Jewish Talmudist or theologist, and he will tell you this. You know, which is one, first or second divine commandment? I forgot. Do not praise other gods. But look at the original. It says, do not celebrate other gods in front of me. It's like that father, you know, like what you do up there at your home, you can burn all the candles to your pagan goats or whatever. Just do it, you know. A good master allows a niche for you. And the problem I find with postmodern permissivity is that it no longer functions as this type of a master. A modern father authority would not tell you, you shouldn't do it, but then secretly count that you do it. No, he would tell you, here you have condoms, here you have some sex, it's healthy, you know, and so on. Some horrors like this which totally ruin you. Just to conclude, wortwörtlich. Eine Minute. Okay. No, because I forgot that I remember that I forgot to elaborate in what sense I rehabilitate the master. You know, there is a master who gives you orders, prohibitions, injunctions. But there is another type of a master. For example, although I'm well aware of the horrors of Chinese cultural revolution, at the beginning, Mao Zedong did something beautiful. When students start to revolt, he wrote them a letter claiming, you have the right to revolt. And I claim that my notion of authentic master is not the one who gives you orders, but whose message is only, you can do it. You are allowed to do it, you know. The one whose message is, do the impossible, risk it, you can do it. And now you will say, but why can't we decide alone? No, we cannot, I claim. We are, as it were, in our spontaneous anthropology, self-constrained. Somebody has to kick you from outside. And now you are kicking me and I stop. Thank you. Jetzt machen wir 10 Minuten für Demokratie. No? I hope you were a good Stalinist and distributed the questions, you know, so I like this. I spoke 20 years ago with an old communist, you know, when all the dissident movement was there, and he told me a wonderful thing. He told me, we communists are always for spontaneous debates. Just spontaneous debate has to be especially well prepared to prevent enemy provocations, you know, like, please.
So only people with red shirts are allowed to speak up.
Und Sie dürfen auf jeden Fall auch
Yeah, but red shirt is not an empirical category. We decide whose shirt is red, yes.
Okay, Sie dürfen auch in deutscher Sprache fragen.
Natürlich, ja.
Ja, bitte.
Bitte.
Ich habe
Bitte.
Nummer 1.
Nummer 1 von
ist
verteilten Fragen. Ja.
Nummer 2 rechts.
Ja.
Okay, not sure to ask this correctly. Okay, you told us all this stuff, and the thing that sticks in my head is that the implication of all this that we actually expect from the state, we because you said we should tell the state to act like an authority, like an authority should act. And by telling this to the state, we're actually expecting the state not to do that, because that's like the father song in the end about the movie.
If this is a question, I would say no, this is the standard functioning of the state, I claim. Every normal state gives you a niche for small criminal activity, collaborates with it, and so on. I'm not saying anything mystical here. Did you see the TV series The Wire? It's all about this. No.
No, actually, I'm saying the other way around, because
yeah,
it's because you told us we should tell to the authorities act like authorities.
Yeah.
So by telling this, we are actually taking this kind of master position that moment, because you said we would break this idea, and. So in a sense, we are actually putting ourselves in this authority position, and then we would expect from the other person to actually break this.
No, you know what would be? I see now your point. No, my point is a simple one. I wasn't proposing a general formula. I was just talking about how to subvert this postmodern pseudo-permissive functioning of authority. In this specific situation, I think, let's say you have a postmodern boss who treats you as a friend. I did it this once in the army, and the result was catastrophic. We had an officer who was this worst kind of, drinking with us, telling dirty jokes, and I treated him, yes, officer, and so on. I treated him not as a friend, but as a person with authority. I can tell you it was much more subversive. He tried to put me in prison and so on, my God. You know, because this is just a very specific example of how to deal with so-called permissive authorities. I'm not a great friend of authority. I mean, no. I'm still a naive guy who believes that it is socially possible an egalitarian community without a master. I'm not this conservative Freudian. I hate them even most. You know, those who claim there are moments of freedom in ecstatic revolutions, in personal mythical experience, but sooner or this is the cynical wisdom which predominates today. We can have inner experience or ecstatic collective experiences of freedom, but sooner or later things return to normal, and all we can do is not to take the social game of domination too seriously, like take it with a cynical distance. That's what I'm totally opposed to. I think that cynics are not only wrong, they are the most naive people, usually. It's interesting how even in politics, cynics are always wrong. Who was the great cynic of the last decades of American politics? Henry Kissinger. He was always stupidly wrong. He always wanted to make a realistic deal and so on, and it didn't work. You know, cynics are for, and this is important to know today. Why? When right-wing neoliberals act as if the crisis we are in was the result of some free-spending social democrats. No, the crisis we are in, it wasn't cooked by some social idealists who spend too much money for education. As we all know, this crisis is the outcome of bankers who are the most cynical, brutal people you can imagine, and they screwed it up. There is another question, to what extent they really screwed it up, you know, to what extent this wasn't a manipulation of banks to gain and so on and so on. But what I'm saying is just that cynicism doesn't work. Today's, or rather, if it works in a strange way. Let me just briefly explain this. Today, by cynicism, I don't mean that you pretend to believe but privately you laugh at it. As Freud already knew, much more typical today, I claim, it's the opposite experience, that people actually believe much more than they think. You pretend not to take it seriously, but secretly you take it much more seriously. And this is also one of the points of Robert Faller's notion of interpassivity. The typical case today is, we don't believe, but if you ask a religious person today, and the results can be quite ironic here. A year or two ago, some journalist made an intelligent investigation in Slovenia. He first asked a group of people, are you Christian? 70-80% of the people said yes. Then, in between asking them some other questions, 5 minutes later asked them a question which was just a specification of, are you a Christian? Like, do you believe that 2,000 years ago a man was walking around in Palestine who was the Son of God? Like 5% believed that, and so on. But I claim they really did believe. You know, their answer would have been, I just think there is some higher power, but I just obey the ritual because it gives me sense of identity, meaning to life. But no, like, that's the great news of Faller. Beliefs can function even if no one subjectively assumes them. Beliefs are a social fact which, and here I'm tempted to go even further than Faller, or maybe not, because he knows this, that there are some beliefs which function only if they are not subjectively taken seriously. And you know which is one of these beliefs? For example, people say today, who needs psychoanalysis? It's common knowledge, Freud was for the Victorian era. But, and here I agree with Faller that we live in much more oppressive times than it may appear. But did you notice one central insight of psychoanalysis is totally repressed today? Children sexuality. Today, the ultimate sin is pedophilia. As if, you know, children are again elevated into this pure, I mean, for me, children are the Kantian radical böse embodied. No? That's why I love them and so on. But what I want seriously to say is that you see how, like, we can do all orgies and so on, but the naive gaze of a child should not know it. You know, it is as if the child believes for us. This is, I think, how beliefs function today. Sorry, I know I didn't really answer to your question, but that's life.
But there was no hope for that anyway.
Sorry?
There was no hope for that anyway.
Yeah, because I think this is opportunism to really answer questions. You must be there.
I have a question to the education system. So the mantra is, if every child can have the same education, it can come to the inner circle of power. It can come up to the upper class and it can participate. But I think that's a lie, because the society selects the people who come to the inner circle.
This is not a naive question. This is a naive question. How do you think, I don't know the answer, how do you think that society selects?
Friendship.
Here I think maybe it's more obscure and so on, but to a large extent it is. Can I give you an example? Maybe you know it. I was told in France and in England that if you look at the top politicians, independently if they are left or right, I mean official left or right, 80% of them come from the same elite schools and so on. It's strictly this Mandarin's nomenclatura and so on. It's incredibly important. But you know what? To answer your question with respect to education and so on, I was not a friend of Steve Jobs. I think in a way he was even a worse manipulator than Bill Gates. But one great thing he did, maybe you know it, his legendary answer to, because he despised common consumers, ordinary people, you know, he made the famous statement, and it sounds nicely, that it's not the task of our customers to know what they want, you know. Like, they are too stupid. This is how he justified that Apple never made these, how do you call it, investigations, what do customers want, no? And he was very funny here. He quoted, you know, there is a famous phrase by Henry Ford, the one who invented the mass car, who said, if I were to ask public what do they want, they would probably said a bigger and faster horse, you know. That was where you have a great and incidentally, this public reaction of the public, this is ideology at its purest. When I was in India, I got a newspaper note. You know how hundreds, at least, if not thousands, of people in India earn money? You have companies which employ hundreds of people, and they are called like factories. Not like us, but like I like it. You know what are they doing? Let's say you have a company, you are selling a product, and you know, when people visit your site, you usually ask them this humiliating, did you like our product or not? And people, these are paid to just click thousands of times like. So that when a third idiot visits your online website, you say, oh my God, 10,000 people like this, it must be something. So much about this public, opinion polls and so on. But what's interesting about Steve Jobs is this. He said, it's not the job of our customers to know what they want. It's our job to, I stop here, because you would expect him to play the Stalinist leader, to say, we creative capitalists know better than people what they really need. No, that's the Stalinist leader position. The Stalinist leader knows better than the people what they really want, so he will force them to be free even if he kills them. No? But he goes on in a different, Steve Jobs says, it's not the job of our customer, the task to know what they want, it's our task, top creative capitalists, to discover what we want. The idea is this one, and that's an authentic master. You follow what you want, and you give to ordinary people the freedom to follow you or not. And I claim, because that's my memory from the school, the few good teachers that I had were not the ones who were patronizing us, you know. But you were able to feel, for example, we had an excellent history teacher. And we all felt how she is in it. And some of us were simply seduced by the mere fact that she knew what she wanted. That's what the true master does. The true master is not obsessed by, oh, will I control them? No, a true master, I do my job, I don't care if the whole world falls apart. And then maybe you will send his desire and follow it or not. Ich habe gesprochen, so. But now I noticed here the linke deviation. Maybe we should give voice to the right wing so that we are. She's a centrist opportunist. Sorry, bitte.
Also ich habe eine kurze Frage, und zwar, was ist der Grund dafür, dass die Linke in der Zeit der Postdemokratie keine alternativen Ideen hat, was man will, was das Weib will, wie das vorhin zusammen mit Occupy auch gefallen ist?
Oh my God, this is a $1 million question. Here I'm a radical pessimist. I don't blame the Linke like idiots and so on. I'm very pessimist here. Maybe it's just that it's really that our situation doesn't allow for a credible alternative. But we need it. You know why? I'm a kind of a pessimist communist. I'm not an optimist communist, there is a beautiful future, we just have to fight of it. I think that if we allow history, global history, the way it is now, to drift freely, to go where it goes, we are, if we exclude possibilities of some great catastrophe, ecological, whatever, we are slowly approaching a much more authoritarian form of capitalism. Countries like China and Singapore should already be a lesson to us. I always repeat this. Here we have a capitalism which is much more dynamic than our European, but at the same time it functions very well with a more authoritarian political structure. So I always think you must give the devil what belongs to the devil. Till now, capitalism effectively did sooner or later engender some kind of demand for democracy. You can have 20 years of dictatorship, so there was a kind of eternal marriage between the two. But this marriage is approaching divorce today. And this is for me the true crisis. I think Western liberals are wrong because most of them think, you see how China is progressing. My God, with true liberal democracy, it would have been even faster. No, it would have been a mess probably. And that's the sad news for me, that, like, you know, old Marxists still had this trust histories on our side. You know, there may be troubles, but historical, no, I don't think, I'm here more on Benjamin. Didn't Benjamin use that metaphor directed against the standard Marxist social democratic phrase, we are riding the train of history, no? And Benjamin says, no, today our task is more to pull the emergency brake. And I agree with him because I obey this cynical East European wisdom. Of course, when you are on a train, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But what if this light is probably another train coming to you? So again, you see my despair. I openly say this. Yeah. The point is not, do we want or not change? The true tragedy for me is that if we do nothing, in 20, 30 years, we will live in a strange society. And it's already, even with us in Europe, it's already happening. You know, as a Hegelian, I always claim crucial things happen at the level what Hegel called Sitten, unwritten public rules. Which is why, and I hope when I explain it you will agree with me, I'm for dogmaticism in morals. What do I mean by this? The sign of a maturity of a society is that there are certain ethical insights and practices about which you don't debate. For example, I wouldn't like to live in a society where you would have to debate all the time, should women be raped or not? You know, and these eternal questions, what if they secretly enjoy it or whatever. I would like to live in a society where, when someone tries to argue that women want to be raped, he simply appears as a kind of, maybe you even laugh at him, kind of, oh, what an eccentric idiot, and so on, you know. At this level, I'm for dogmaticism. Ja, but ich kann. Dialektisch gesehen, you know what would be for me the ideal debate? That I say something and then you have guessed the question to which I was answering. Sorry, let's go on.
My question follows your sentences, and it's a very short and a very broad question. Are you an optimist? And if you have an answer, so please try to explain.
Okay. First, I am basically a pessimist. Very brief. I'm a pessimist. But I think pessimists are, and this is not a cheap joke, I really feel it like this. Pessimists are basically the only happy people today. You know why? You're a pessimist, you expect nothing. But usually something happens here and there, so you are always nicely surprised. You know what I mean? I mean, it must be horrible to be optimist. But to answer your point, I'm not trying to play some cheap dialectic, but I am this sounds so stupid, optimist, pessimist, in the sense that it's the very pessimism, the despair. We can see dark signs on the horizon, ecology, genetics, apartheid, but this very dark perspective will maybe, I'm not sure, push us towards action. So if I'm a little bit of an optimist, I am for the very same reason for which I am on large-scale pessimist. But this is nothing new. It was already Max Horkheimer who proposed this formula, pessimism in theory, optimism in practice, or whatever. No? I mean, because you know, with all the shit that it goes on, nonetheless, miracle, not in religious sense, but in political sense, do happen. Like, who would have expected the Arab Spring and so on? I still remember, I have evil memory, how when things happened in Tunisia, I remember reading long comments in New York Times, Newsweek was already virtual, no, it wasn't yet, or Time, demonstrating in detail why this is limited to Tunisia and cannot happen in Egypt. You know? And so unexpected things, wonders happen, do happen. But you know what's my pessimism? I wonder if you agree with me here. People often fall into this trap they think that changes happen when things are really bad, you know. People suffer, they tolerate it up to a certain point. Then it gets really, really bad, they explode. No. If you look at all upheavals, revolution, they almost always happen when things are getting a little bit better, and this, because of this, expectations explode, which those in power cannot meet. French Revolution. My God, the king was losing power for 20, 30 years. It was so. Even the great anti-Soviet revolt 56 in Hungary. It wasn't the worst of Stalinism. In 54, Nagy Imre was already prime minister. There already was opening. So this is a very sad lesson for dictators. No compromise. Be brutal to the end, and maybe you have a chance to.
I'm sure that you know Antonio Gramsci and his ideas of hegemony in culture.
Yeah.
So that if there is a chance to rule as a left or as a leftist, to get the rule in culture hegemony.
Yeah.
And I think that the today's situation is that the mass medias are not very good on our side, and they tell us a lot of shit, and this is maybe also a reason that there's no possibility of hegemony.
Yes, but I think it's even worse, the situation that, look, one of the things that I really hate are these big art biennales. They perfectly fit the capitalist machinery, although, and this is what disgusts me, usually the curator writes a program which is extremely Marxist, like we are all in commodification, is there a chance to escape it, whatever. You know, here you have a perfect example of apparent radically Marxist reflection, but just enabling an institution to function perfectly. Or another false anti-capitalism. I mean, our media are full of false capitalism. You cannot open a journal without reading, this bank is ruining us with speculation, that factory is polluting environment, that factory is using child labor, and so on. But it's always psychological personalized. It's always as if you locate a bad capitalist there. This is why when there was the financial meltdown, 2008, I was tempted to write a celebration of that creepy guy who stole 50 billion, you remember, Bernard Madoff. Because it was so easy, you had there an evil Jew who robbed us all. I mean, bankers were always like that. The problem is not there are evil bankers. The problem is, why is it so easy for them to do it today, you know? The answer is systemic, and this is for me why the problem is not, are the media critical enough? The problem is that they are not really critical, even if they are critical. To give you another example, that's why I don't like those heroic pseudo-leftist American films, like, for example, All the President's Men, Pelican Brief, what are these? Two journalists, you know, Nixon, Watergate, can bring down American president. It appears very critical. My God. On the top of United States, American president is corrupted and so on. But why do this film make you feel so good? Because the message is nonetheless soothing. What a great country are we where two ordinary journalists can bring down the mightiest man in the world. And in this way they obfuscate many other crucial facts. For example, the more I learn about Nixon, the more I'm sympathetic towards them. Every American leftist will tell you, if you measure left by how much money is given to healthcare, education, and so on, Nixon was the most leftist of American presidents. Point two, he opened up things with China. Probably that was why he had to fall. It's clear that Watergate would not have happened if some important part of American establishment would not also decide that Nixon had to go, you know. So again, I agree with you, but for me, it's also dangerous, this pseudo-critical left, which is like us giving charity, you know, like when there was a war in Yugoslavia, on Austrian, your TV, there was a wonderful satirical poem making fun of all you had the action Nachbar im Not, I think, no? And the song runs somehow like, Der letzte Jugo ist tot, so gibt es jetzt keinen Nachbar im Nord or something like this. Charity makes us feel good because we pretend to be good, but we pay charity to make it sure that it stays there. It doesn't come too close, no?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gut, ganz herzlichen Dank, Slavoj. Ja, danke für die Beiträge. Und ich hoffe, wir sehen uns zum großen Teil wieder nächste Woche mit dem Vortrag von Eva Kandauer. Ganz herzlichen Dank.
No, stop. I will tell you what would have been my answer to you as a Stalinist. It would have been, thank you for this applause, because I know it wasn't really at me that you addressed it, but at all that is great today in the world, at the millions who are struggling, and I just symbolize those millions. Why does a Stalinist say this? Because then I can say, if you attack me, you are really attacking all those millions and so on, so you shouldn't attack me. Thank you very much.